Hi, welcome to Nourishing Body and Soul, the podcast. Get ready to revitalize your mind, body, and soul. We're here to inspire women who are looking to break free from old patterns and ideas to create a life of increased confidence and improved health. Say goodbye to limiting beliefs and hello to new possibilities. So kick back, get ready to have some fun, and let's dive in. We'll uncover tools and insights that can help you build a life that's truly nourishing, body and soul. Hi, welcome to the podcast. I'm Tracy.
I'm Victoria.
And we're so very glad that you're here with us today. Today's topic is one that Victoria has some questions about, so we just figured we'd chat about it. And maybe they're questions you've had too, or maybe you will have some of your own thoughts about answers to her questions.
Yes, maybe.
So today, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I had some questions about faith.
Okay.
And you are a very faithful but logical woman. And sometimes those two things do not exist in the same mind. So, like my mind, it does not always exist in the same mind. Not that I'm super logical, but also, what's that scripture? Like, lean not into
thine own understanding.
Thine own understanding. Yeah, I lean a lot into that, and I don't know if I don't think that God he just doesn't bother with me. Or, I mean, by saying that out loud, obviously God bothers with people.
Yeah, I know what you mean though.
But yeah, sometimes I think, well,
he's got bigger problems on his hands.
There's a lot of other problems. He didn't have to worry about me. So then I lean into my own understanding. And so I always appreciated you're not as some people when they talk about faith or something like that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. They get very emotional, and there's a lot of like emotion and spirituality. It just sounds terrible, but that's not. When you talk about faith, it does feel very grounded. And I'm just curious, I guess, how you get that. And I know there's things that you do that I kind of want to ask you about, but just kind of an overview, like how do you see your faith, and how does that faith help you enter the world?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Thank you. Yeah.
And one that I think it's worth everybody pondering for themselves. It's something, my current approach is something that I've grown into, because faith is such a word, it's like you can't really get your hands on it.
No.
And one of the things that I came to, I don't know how long ago, was just an analogy that faith is like the wind. It's like you can't see the wind.
Yes.
But you can. I said this to somebody one time, like, yes, you can. I said, no, you can't. And they said, okay, what about the leaves blowing down the street? I said, that's not the wind you're seeing. You're seeing the effects of the wind.
Yeah.
We see the effects of what it does. We see the big things spinning and the turbine spinning, the big blades. But that's not the wind. That's the effect of the wind. And when we go outside on a windy day, we can feel it on our skin, but we can't see the wind itself. And I thought, to me, that's like one component of faith, is that it has such direct application and effect on so many things, but you can't necessarily see it itself.
Yeah. So you're seeing, when you look at the world, you see all the sort of the miracles of faith. Is that what you're kind of saying?
That's part of it.
Seeing the effects of faith.
And then too, just kind of like, okay, well, that's the thing. Then what are the effects? What are, and not just in scripture, but in many analogies, it's like, what's the fruit of the tree? What's the fruit? What's the fruit? And so it's like, what are the effects? What am I seeing? And especially like, looking at people who, especially, it's like, all right, this is somebody who I think, who appears to be very faithful. What fruits am I seeing in their life? Or even if they're not somebody who I think is particularly faithful, it's like, that person has this fruit, this quality. They are so kind. That's a fruit. And as I know them, I can either ask them, or I can just kind of watch and, make some conjecture of how did they get that fruit? What brought them to that? And so thinking about that kind of things, like, so what are the effects that I'm seeing? And especially people who, man, would go through really hard things and still have hope and still have just not sink into bitterness, not sink into self-pity. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And so again, my friend Karen.
She was a really amazing person.
She was, still is, I'm sure.
She still is.
I haven't seen her for a while, but she went through some really hard things. She's the person who I knew very close and personally at a pretty young age, who went through very hard things.
She went through a lot of the health problems, right?
A lot of health problems, I think I probably said before, I said to her many times, don't even bother writing your life story, because nobody will believe that this all happened to one person in one lifetime. Because at younger age, and everybody has their big trial moment in life. And these are things like death of somebody very close to you, health scares, or long-term health issues, or the effects of war, and all of those. She, literally, like I know I've said before, she literally died. It was either 2 or 3 times and was brought back to life.
Wow.
It's like, you don't have all those at once. She had her one child who was born prematurely and was in the hospital for a while. That can be one big, it's okay. That's your big trial for life. Her second child was born prematurely, never left the hospital, and died before he was 6 months old. That's another, oh my gosh. And so looking, and the list goes on and on with her. And so she had to deal with darkness and hardship and trial, and kind of going through that with her. I learned a lot about faith. As a matter of fact, when she got married, I wrote her a song, and it wasn't a love song. You could say so. It's a song about faith. It's like, this is you. This is you. Even in that, in our 20s, that's what I was seeing in her already.
Wow.
And so seeing that from her and seeing the effects of her life, and so many things, any one of the things that she went through could be enough to have somebody just really sink into that bitterness and anger, and shaking their fist at God if they're a person who believes in God, and if they're not a person who believes in God, somebody who at least could then just feel like a victim of life.
There's a poem by Shakespeare, one of his sonnets, and I always remember when I start feeling really down on myself, because it's hilarious to me. And let me see if I can remember it. It's something about, you're alone and God is deserting you. And it's something like, I alone beweep my outcast state, and troubled of heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. So every time I go through something really, really hard, or really I want to feel sorry for myself, I think of that poem, because I think, that's so ridiculous. It's like, I'm not that's like, look at that guy over there. To me, that's like somebody who really has lost his mind and perspective. And God's like, yeah. So anyway, and the second half of the second half of the sonnet is sorting all that out. But just the idea, I'm not there. No matter what, I'm not crying to heaven with my bootlessness. So anyway, but that just the sinking into the deep despair.
And how to find hope when really there's no logical reason for it. No logical reason for it. And so to me, it just became a very real thing. A very oh, okay, faith is not just what we say. Oh yes, I believe. Or I believe this or that, which is a part of it. But it's a principle of action, and when
that's a good way. It's a principle of action. You don't just have faith. You there's not, you are yeah, faithful, but like, yeah, that's an action.
Yeah, and when it
a choice.
motivates, yeah,
choice.
100%. I think that's the bottom line. I think that's really the absolute bottom line of it all, is that it's a choice. We're going to get a little book nerdy here for a minute.
I just quoted Shakespeare, so well, it's a little too late for that.
No, we're never going to C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
In his Chronicles of Narnia, his last book of that series is called The Last Battle.
Are you going to spoiler alert it?
No, just a part of it.
Okay, spoiler alert, in case you haven't read it.
In the how many years it's been out. So there, at the end, there's the last battle. And some of the characters from earlier books have come back, and there's this Aslan is the lion, who is the Christ figure, and there's an imposter that is saying that he's Aslan, and there's this, but it's a donkey who his buddy, who's an ape, who is the brains, and always told him how dumb he was, the donkey. So they find this lion skin. It's like, oh, we'll just make a nice coat for you. And so they put the lion skin on the donkey, and he's like, oh, and you could be Aslan. And the donkey's like, no, heck no. And he's like, no, you don't know about these things. Think of all the good we could do. We could make Narnia a better place. And so, long story short, the donkey ends up going up. But it's a donkey in a lion skin. Nobody who sees him up close or in very good lighting is going to believe this. And so it's all like, at night, when anybody can see him, it's always at night. It's kind of from a distance kind of thing. So there's enough reports that people are going, hey, Aslan's here. So there comes this, they have this stable that Aslan is in, and
at the donkey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so the ape trying to get people, he's just very controlling, and he gets this soldier to stand inside the stable door where nobody can see, and has orders of who to like kill and not kill. So what happens is some people, when they go through and they don't come back out, and they must not have been doing the right thing. Well, these the former kings and queens, Lucian, if you're familiar with this at all, if you've read the Chronicles of Narnia, Lucy and Edmund and Peter and Susan, they're like the original kings and queens from like way back in the beginning of the series. And they have come back. And where they are is this beautiful, like there's these trees with all like fruit that's so good you can't even describe it. And it's like this weather is absolutely perfect, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And the current king of Narnia is there. He had been thrown into the stable. And so then it's like, well, wait, what is with this door? And it's like, it's just a doorway. It's like, no, that's the stable door that you came in through. And so when you went through this stable door, it was this beautiful, beautiful place, or it was it wasn't. It was just a dark stable, depending on what you were willing to see. And so the dwarves are there, and they're all sitting in a little circle, really close together, and they're Lucy's like, well, we should help them. And the real Aslan comes then. And like, what is happening? We should help them. And he said, I'll show you what I can do and what I can't do. And so the real Aslan.
Okay.
And so he goes over and he provides this beautiful feast for these. They have had a little interaction with the dwarves before, and it becomes very apparent that the dwarves think they're in a pitch black stable, and they're just huddled together. That's it. They're not going to be taken in by anybody. And so Aslan provides this beautiful feast for them. They can't see him. They just like, oh, there's food. And so they start tasting it. But even what they're tasting is not this wonderful food. It's like hay and things that would be in the stable. And these cups of beautiful red wine. And when they drink it, it's like, imagine just drinking the same water out of the trough that donkeys drunk out. And so their experience is totally different. And the dwarves are like, they say, we won't be taken in. It's like, so they have decided that this is what they will see, and this is what their experience is. And it's like the dwarves are for the dwarves and nobody's gonna take us in and we're just gonna, this is, that's it. And I think that's such a good image of what we talked about last week. What are you looking for? What are you willing to see? And in this situation, the dwarves had a choice, as did the other characters, and their faith, their belief in the real Aslan, when they came through, and being willing to be taken in by something that didn't make sense. This is what they experienced. The dwarves, on the other hand, in the same exact place, had a completely different experience because of what they were willing to see. Absolutely. I think faith, bottom line, it's a choice. It's a choice. What are you willing? Are you doing? Are you like, I'm not gonna be taken in by that? There are a lot of people who think faith is a weakness. It's a crutch for feeble minds. For people who aren't,
I mean, I don't
right enough.
I'm not saying that I am one of those people, but it is hard for me to just let go. It's pride, which of all the deadly sins, pride is the root of all of them.
It causes so much trouble.
And it is pride that you can't see it, so it doesn't exist,
and it doesn't make sense to me. So
it doesn't make sense. So obviously, it's letting go of your ability to be completely 100% evidence-based, and that sometimes is hard for people.
It is, but even in another more kind of day-to-day application, in a relationship, when you're first beginning a relationship, what are you willing to see? How much are you willing to put yourself out there? And sometimes people put too much of themselves out there too quickly. It's like, there's a balance there. But I don't think I know of anyone who doesn't have some story of, oh yeah, I can see that there was a relationship that I could have had that would have been a good one. Had I been willing to see that and to be willing to be taken in. Like the dwarves talk about. It's like, if I would have been willing to receive that, if I would have made a different choice, then I could have had something that I don't now. And it's not like, oh, and regret and woe is me. It's like, okay, so what have I changed from then? Or am I going to make the same mistake again? And looking at that. And that I think is where faith becomes a very active thing. It's like, okay, what did I learn from that? And where can I go from there?
And that's, I think it's easy to be suspicious. And suspicious has all of these suspicious mind all those connotations, but suspicious of if you're talking about a relationship, it's you're suspicious of, okay, is this good thing can happen to me, or or something. And so it's I think it's tied up in pride, but also if you've been burned,
fear,
you're afraid to let go. How important are things that you read? You read a lot, right?
You
read a lot. So you read all kinds of things, right? So how important is that, do you think, in kind of building faith or building building faith, building a sense of hope, or a sense of, is it good in, good out? Is that,
yes and no. Somebody could read scriptures and go, what a load of rot. And so it's like that there's good in, but I think it's really important, and reading is a really good way to do it, but it's obviously not the only way. Good gravy, how many forms of communication do we have these days? I think a big part of it is experiencing things with an open mind, with people, whether that be people, or whether it be things that we're watching or things that we're reading. But then also, as we're kind of narrowing down, it's like, we don't need to keep revisiting the same things over and over and over again. And so it's like being willing, it's like, oh, this book is a book that so many people are talking about. It's like all the rage these days. So maybe I'll read that. And so read it, reading it with an open mind, not just with, well, everybody's saying, so it must be great. But also not like, well, everybody's saying, so a bunch of sheep, and let me prove them wrong. Neither one, just kind of going in and going, okay, what do I think about this? How do I feel about this?
Mhm.
And then and then we go, okay, yeah, yeah. So when that person writes another book, or there's something else that you experience that ties in with that or correlates with that or agrees with that, you kind of go, yeah, okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
and you take from there, like, I mean, it sounded like a lot, you take from the symbols that are in the book, or, you know, you know, to sort of bolster, you know, the scriptures, like bolster your faith or bolster your hope, or both.
Well, and I think it ties in again with we talked about this last time, the scripture that says over and over again, one of the most common things repeated in the scriptures is ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. And so what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Because seriously, we can find evidence to support
whatever
we think. Yeah. Whatever we think.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to not I mean, the algorithms of social media are so tuned into this is what you think, okay, we're going to give you all this stuff that's going to support those beliefs, which it's important to experience other people and other ideas outside of what you believe, so that you can go, okay, does that have a place here, or does it not, instead of just going, oh no, and just having your current beliefs constantly reinforced. And so just seeking makes a huge difference, because it's, you know, wanting to find truth and that in and of itself is a kind of faith that there is truth to be found.
Yeah. And you do quite a bit of journaling too, right? I mean, how does that help?
For me, it just helps sort things out a lot, because I find, you know, if you have to form it, it's easy for thoughts to run around in your head, and it's easy to think that, well, if I thought it, then of course. But when you take those thoughts and try to formulate them in a way that you can put them on paper and make sense, it's a different process. And so it's a kind of a filter. And it's an interesting experience too, because then I don't do this often, but like the other day I was just moving some stuff around. I found a journal. I was like, oh, I don't even remember what I put in this journal. Because the journal I keep is not like a daily, today, you know, I went grocery shopping. It's not, it's more kind of thoughts or this or that. And so like I'll have this journal that I use kind of for like, you know, this is the progress of my business. I have this that I use for a long time. I did keep kind of a daily, but it's kind of like what's on my mind and what am I experiencing kind of a thing. So I have lots of different journals.
Well, that's good.
But anyways, we came across this one the other day that was just like, what did I even put in this? And so going back and looking at it, you go, okay, that's where I was, you know, 4 years ago. That's where I was 10 years ago. And sometimes it's like, it's nice to look and go, oh yes, that's when I remember when I started on this path, that now I see where I am from there. And other times I look back and I go, I learned that already and I had forgotten that. Or it's like, okay, I thought that was, now I can look back and go, I thought that was going to be the thing, or I thought that was going to work out, and it didn't. So it's interesting to look back on. But but really just to be able to formulate, to have somewhere you can dump all your thoughts. Because as dear as our friends are, it's like there are things that we don't need to be just everybody all the time. It's like, all right, I need to sort this out first before this even comes out of my mouth to somebody, you know. So that's interesting. Journaling I think helps a lot with that.
That's good. And you kind of surround yourself with people of all different thoughts, you know. Like I was talking to my mom last night about you, and I know I was saying I don't think I've met anyone who's more open-minded. And I know also that because I know you're also very religious, which I am differentiating that between spiritual, which you also are that, but it's not the stereotype of someone who's religious is not also very open-minded. And yet you managed to do that, you break through that stereotype completely, I think. And is that something that you learned as a kid, to just kind of, because you were the youngest, that you just had open-mindedness, or I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing for open. I don't know if that's a thing for younger. I'm youngest too, so I guess I'm just telling my open-mindedness.
As far back as I remember, I've always been pretty curious about things, and I have really been privileged.
That is so important. Can I just interrupt for a second? Because curiosity, I think, is a very underrated trait. Because I think when you're curious about things, then you're willing to like open yourself up to the world and allow experiences to happen that can either, teach you one thing or the other. So anyway, I think curiosity is a huge trait that I think doesn't get talked about enough. But okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. So curious.
Yeah, and I've been really blessed to know people who, and I think, well, okay, formulating thoughts. Sorry. Buffering.
Yeah, we clearly didn't practice these questions first.
Yeah. I think about my parents divorced when I was going in between my 8th and 9th grade year of school, and it was not a surprise to me. And then talking to my sister years later, talking to my sister who's 2 years older than me, I said something about, saw it coming. And she's like, what? You saw that coming? I said, yeah, it wasn't evident to you. Because my parents didn't fight. So it wasn't like it was an angry household. And that was the first time I went, you mean everybody didn't see that? And so I started thinking about that. And I have this kind of, and it's not anything that I pursued. It's just kind of like, I can kind of see things with people. And it's not like I'm clairvoyant, or it's not like, I don't think it's anything like super exceptional. I just think I'm kind of tuned in. I could tell from a very young age that my parents' marriage wasn't healthy. And so it's kind of like, oh, okay, so I can kind of tune into people. And I've been so fortunate to know so many really amazing people. And I've just learned so much from so many people. And so that kind of curiosity, I still remember a good friend of mine who, I was just astounded at her ability. She could talk to anyone. I'm like, how does she do that? I mean, initially it was like, good gravy, how does she do that? And I went, wait a minute, no, really, how does she do that? And so
there are lessons you can pay for on the internet to do that.
I'm warning you now. I do this with all my friends, and not just friends, but it's like, something that usually is something I admire. It's like, how do they do that? How did that come about in their life? And for her, with that particular one, I just realized she just asked some questions about themselves. Like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
And so she was able to connect with a lot of people and learn from a lot of people. And I learned that from her, again, in my 20s. And so it's something that I've carried through, and that, that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
And just kind of being willing to see, and you have said many times, everybody has an interesting story.
Yes, they do.
Everybody's an interesting story.
Every single person.
And so there's always, I was in this group the other day, they were talking about, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And I said,
that's so hard for me. Well, I'm just joking. I'm 100% joking. I'm the prettiest one in the room. I'm so joking, obviously.
But it's like, that's kind of you don't want to think you're the smartest person in the room, but because if you go in thinking you're the smartest person in the room, then you're not opening yourself to learn from anybody in the room. And I'm a firm believer that everybody has something that I can learn, because their life experience is different. I was talking to somebody else recently who's feeling kind of shy about starting a new business because Spanish is her first language, and she's very self-conscious about her language skills are probably better than she thinks they are, but also her accent. And I just said, honey, no, don't, it's like, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to tell you from my side, when I hear your accent, I go, it is such an auditory instant reminder that you have had different life experiences than I have. Therefore, there are things that I can learn from you.
Yeah, that's good. That's really.
And so it's just recognizing that there's just so much.
And so you're looking for the good in somebody too. So it sounds like this is probably just a tiny little subset of what makes your faith, but like surrounding yourself with people that are interesting and good and whatever, or finding the good in that, in reading, in seeking out good
we
things.
did an episode about that we have a microphone for our life.
Yes.
And who we give our microphone to. That's what I thought. It resonated so much when I read that. It's like, okay, this is the good analogy that is, yes, this is I guess, like this is what I was doing already. I just didn't have that analogy. I thought, oh, that's a really good one. And so it's like being careful about who we give our microphone to and going, okay.
And our microphone is what we hear.
Yeah.
Speaking
of microphones, this is not where it needs to be. So we'll just use hopefully
hopefully you can hear us this whole time. So yeah, but like it's our microphone that we give, so what we hear back. It's not like our microphone, hey, it's give it to them and then what we hear. What's amplified.
And and then we can go, okay, here's my mic. And yes, what you said last time and this topic I loved. So I'm giving my microphone to you again. And in this area, you're a person who gets my mic whenever that's, whenever that's appropriate. Or kind of going, okay, here's the microphone to you, somebody new or some new book or some new whatever, and going, okay. And then taking it back and going, that's just not, I appreciate that that's their experience and that's what they think, but it's not. It's not somebody that I want to be around a lot.
You don't want to be amplified.
And curating things.
Yeah, especially as we get older too. Sometimes though, as we get older, we kind of like, okay, we've heard it all. We've seen all these types of people. That's that. And that is the one thing. My mom is turning 91 next week. And that is the one thing that I've learned a bunch of things from her. But one of the most important things, honestly, I think was one, curiosity. And her ability to still be learning things. Like she was asking me today about how she could switch different apps on her phone without having to close everything out. And she was really frustrated. And all of a sudden I stopped her and I go, you know what? My aunt that's 90 has a flip phone that all she knows how to do is dial it. That is it. Like her daughter plugs it in for her. I'm like, you're on Instagram, you're on Twitter. And like, that is not usual for someone your age. And she's like, but I'm used to just being able to do everything, but also to learn everything and not to ever shut herself off. And, she changed, this is more than anyone needs to know, but she changed political parties very late in life. And that was a surprise to me. But because she took in the information that and lined it up and went, okay, I'm not going to be prescribed this, I'm going to be whatever it is. And it just is an answer that even in places where people stay for their lifetime. I mean, I've never changed political parties and I've been disagreeing with mine for many years. But, it's always a lesson for me to be open. And I think that's important too. I don't know if it's important to faith, but it's important to life.
Oh, it is, because I think that can be, and I think there are people some people are too afraid to be too curious, to ask the questions because they think their faith is more fragile than it really is. Because I'm a firm believer that truth is truth is truth. Truth is found in many places. And if what you're believing can't stand up to some scrutiny, that's something you want to look at. But then also, friends from a long time ago, her parent used to say to her, be sure you keep an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out.
That's good. That's good. I've never heard that one before.
So it's like, I think part of it's like faith is, to me, is the kind of is a blend of constant curiosity, but also in that curiosity and the things that you're learning, getting to a point, sometimes not as quickly as you want to.
Yeah.
Most of the time, not as quickly as we want to, of where then it's like, oh no, I'm sure about this now.
Mm-hmm.
This I know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to question that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Yeah.
But being open, and then that's when you can listen to somebody else and go, okay.
Yeah.
And it just water off the back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this kind of, it's a very interesting combination.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like I said before, I think the bottom line is it's a choice.
Yeah. So being willing to learn from yourself through journaling, through media, however that is, as long as, taking good and good out, really, from others,
And I think a big part of it too, that there's far too little of in our world today, is learning to be still. And speaking from my own experience, learning to really trust yourself and your intuition. And it's like, that people will often say, it's a gut feeling. Yeah. It's not just here. Yeah. And it's not just here, which I think a lot of people think that faith is all in the heart. Yeah. And it's not all in the heart. It's a combination of just that deep gut, trusting yourself, combined with your heart and what you're feeling, combined with the power of your intellect. But it's like this combination of all three of those things come together beautifully. Wow. In a faith that's a faith of action.
That makes you want to have faith right there, like that. Just describes it beautifully. I'm like, oh, I need to start working on, like, check. Let's see if we can get some faith going here. Yeah.
So it's what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Thank you. What are we willing to be open to?
Thank you so much. I didn't mean to cut you off. If you have, thank you for answering my questions. Yeah. I had questions. Things I'm struggling with, obviously. And thank you for doing it on camera so that I can watch it again when I forget.
Yeah. There's another analogy with faith that I just love, and that's the faith being like a seed. And it really is. And it's not just faith. I mean, faith to me is not something you just say, I have faith. Yeah. Like, it's so faith in this, faith in that, faith. It's so many. So many seeds. It's so many seeds. But with a seed, it's not like, okay, here's my seed. It's faith.
Yeah. Click, done.
Okay. Like, all right. And then you have to plant it. And then after you plant it, you have to water it, and you have to make sure it's in a good place, and you have to weed it, and you have to, so there's a process of growing that. Yes. And I think far too often it's way too easy to just go, here's my seed, I have faith. Yeah. Period. End. Done. Or here's my seed, I'm going to plant it.
And that's it.
And God will make it grow.
Yes. Yeah. No, if you're planting tomatoes, you go out in the middle of the night to find out why there are holes. I don't know who else does that.
I'm sure you're not the only one.
I can be. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, so it's something that needs to be nurtured. It's not just, I mean, I think there are people who faith comes more easily for.
Yes, others, definitely.
But that doesn't mean it's not something that they don't need to nurture.
Yeah.
So
good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you.
Faith is good stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Namaste.
All right. So nurture yourself with faith this week. Yeah. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.
Hey, if you want to help us grow this podcast that we're having fun doing, like and subscribe.
And comment.
Oh, yes.
Please comment. We will comment back.
Yes, we will. Hey, it's Tracy. If this was helpful and you'd like more, follow me on Instagram at tlastel.nourishingbodyandsoul, or on Facebook or YouTube at Nourishing Body and Soul, or you can find my website at nourishingbodysoul.com. Thanks for tuning in to Nourishing Body and Soul, the podcast. Before we wrap up, we just want to remind you that the information we share in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended for medical advice. While we hope you find our discussions helpful, we strongly recommend that you seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, or any other aspect of your health. We also want to make it clear that the host, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any adverse effects or consequences that may result from the use of any information or suggestion discussed in this podcast. We care about your well-being, but we can't take responsibility for individual outcomes. By listening to this podcast, you agree to indemnify and hold harmless the hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast from and against any and all claims, damages, liabilities, costs, and expenses arising from your use of the information provided in this podcast. We're so grateful for your support, and we hope you keep listening and learning with us. Thanks.